Welcome everybody to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter. Here's our video version and let's dive right in. So the title this week is Tales from the Jar Side, new Mockito video, CodeRanch appearance, I'll explain what that means, saving daylight at the South Pole, a blurry JPEG of the web, and of course tweets and toots. The subtitle is, My Wife Said I Was Unnecessarily Mysterious. Or did she? I'm sorry. Side-eye spooky music, eventually followed by rim shot, right? Let's dive in. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of February 12th through 19th, 2023. This week I taught week 3 of my Android development bootcamp on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of, this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or viewer or listener. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe, and of course you can also subscribe to the video channel. Here is the video channel, which of course is where the video you're watching is hosted. I'll come back to that later. This week, I put together a new video on the Mockito testing framework. On the companion channel, there's a video now called How Mockito Mocks Help. And it's all about using Mockito to generate mock objects and showing an example where that might actually make your testing cases easier, simpler, the testing job. You can watch it or not, depending on whether you have any interest in that. But there was one thing I felt important enough to remark about in the newsletter. So you'll see that as you can see, the title is How Mockito Mocks Help. And what wasn't obvious to me, but may be clear to you, is that I totally missed that my title has a double meaning. My intention was a demonstration of how mock objects generated by Mockito make your testing job easier. But I totally missed that you could interpret the word mock there, or mocks, as either a noun or a verb. And if it's a noun, then we're talking about what I meant, Mockito generating mocks that help you. But if you say it's a verb, then what I'm saying is how somebody or something named Mockito is mocking or making fun of the help. And that's totally not cool. That's not what I intended at all. I think if I'd realized that, I would have changed it. But it didn't occur to me until the next day when I'm looking at it, possibly from a non-technical eye. It's all about the perspective, right? So, at any rate, a few good things did come out of the video in addition to the video itself. My son, who's my official social media consultant, liked the cover image. So you see, I've got this cover image where I'm looking all thoughtful and everything. I don't know if I'll continue to do that, but he thought it was good. So maybe we'll see. Let me know if you like it or not. And the other thing is my subscriber count on the video channel made it all the way up to 97. And I said, hopefully my next video will somehow increase that past 100, which is a totally meaningless but round number. And I have to tell you that something happened when I released the newsletter yesterday, because my number of subscribers, let me refresh this, is up to 109 right now. Yeah, I made it all the way up to that. So maybe I can get into the 110s for next week. Yeah, I don't quit my day job. I get it. Now, I was talking to my friend Dan Vega about this stuff, and he's been a YouTuber for quite some time, but he makes videos related to the Spring Framework, and has been doing it for several years. He is an employee of, I guess it's VMware now. The company that manages the Spring Framework has gone through several iterations. At any rate, his tweet here that he posted was about passing the 25,000 subscriber number. I think I have a ways to go before I hit that. He's also, by the way, the one who showed me how you could do that trick of taking a picture on a Mac and then right-clicking and selecting just the subject and pasting it in. And that's how I was able to get that thoughtful-looking image that I could paste into my black background like that. So thanks for that, Dan. He forgot to link to his own channel. If I go there just to show you what it is, his own channel, Dan Vega, it's actually at Dan Vega, has 25.3 thousand subscribers. He just released a Spring Boot crash course, and I may watch that. I mean, I know I teach that stuff already, but I might want to see what did he do differently, what does he find interesting. The problem is it's almost 4 hours long, so it'll take a little bit of dedication to do that. Okay. To be a bit more serious on that, I am planning to add technical videos to my channel. I intend to continue the Mockito series. I also am planning a series on my Managing Your Manager book, the one called, here you go, Help Your Boss Help You, also from Pragmatic Programmers. After all, I wrote, as part of that release of that book over a year ago, I wrote a whole series of articles on Medium, which were pretty well received. There's no reason I can't turn those into videos at this point, and some people darn interested in going to Medium to see those and might make for some nice, interesting short videos. I also like the idea of making some Java videos or some Groovy videos or Gradle videos. We'll see how it goes. As is typical, I have way more ideas than I have time or energy to complete, but I keep telling myself that's a good thing, I suppose. So we'll see. Okay. Next section. I made an appearance on CodeRanch. Now, CodeRanch, let me show you that site. CodeRanch is a website that basically has a whole series of what they call forums that are discussion groups on a wide range of topics. Now, CodeRanch is called a friendly place for programming greenhorns, and they talk about Java and mobile and just a ton of different areas. Lots of different forums and book reviews and mobile topics. And what they do is that they host book promotions occasionally. Now, according to the site, I've been a member there since September 18th of 2002. But I know that I've been there longer than that because its predecessor site was called Java Ranch. And I used that back when its primary focus was as a site to prepare for certification exams. They had a lot of test questions and people all preparing together and discussing sample tests and things like that. And my first Java certification came with Java 1 back in the, I guess it's 1998, 1999 timeframe. I think it was before 2000, something like that. 99, 2000, something like that. And that's where I discovered that site, which was managed by, at the time, Kathy Sierra and Bert Bates, who were big names in both technical topics and in education theory. They know a lot about how people learn. If you've ever seen any of the Head First series of books at O'Reilly, things like Head First Java and so on, that's their idea. They had now managed the series and other people write them. And of course, Trisha G updated Head First Java just last year. So they're still going strong and doing well, but the site has kind of moved on. It's become much more generalized. So I used to use it. CodeRanch has these book promotions. So if I show you that, the idea is that they have a schedule and you appear on the site in a particular, as the author, you appear on the site in a particular forum that's relevant to your book, and you agree to answer questions all week. So basically from Tuesday to Friday of a given week. And then they draw like 4 questioners at random and they give them a free book. So that's the reward for that. If I look at the book promotion schedule, you can see that Trisha G and Helen Scott are going to be talking about their Getting to Know IntelliJ IDEA book next week. And then there's a book on troubleshooting Java. And in a few weeks, there's one on Java persistence with Spring Data and Hibernate, which that looks good too. So a lot going on there. That's all very interesting. Now, I would have mentioned this last week, that this was my week to answer questions about my, Mockito Made Clear. Here's the book. I got a, mandatory demonstration of the book page, but I completely forgot. Not that I forgot that I was doing it. I forgot what week we were on. And Monday morning, I get this reminder, hey, it's your week. It's like, oh yeah, right. Now, as it turned out, the volume of questions wasn't that high, and it didn't interfere with my regular schedule, so it wasn't really a problem. The site doesn't do a whole lot of marketing anymore, and a lot of IT people are not even aware that it exists. So it's a little sad. It's not as active as it used to be, but I'm glad I was able to participate and in some form support the site. So that went on last week. Next section. The South Pole is on DST, which stands for Daylight Saving Time. Now, I know I've talked about this demo before, but I found a simple way to show it, and there was a neat follow-on that I have to mention to you. So when I teach classes on Java, then I try to talk about the java.time package, which was added to the library in Java 8. Now, they added it from an existing library. It's really interesting. There's a library called JodaTime, and it's still around, and it's still under development. But at the time, they went to the managers of the JodaTime library, and they, with permission, took the JodaTime library and cleaned it up and released a version of that as part of the Java standard library in the java.time package. So that's great, and it's the long, desperately needed replacement for the java.util.date and calendar classes. I like it, but learning about date and time libraries can be very dry. So I always look for something interesting to talk about in there. And one of the things I put in my Modern Java Recipes book was this little demo here based on the time zones and in Antarctica. So this is a link to the Wikipedia page. And if you go there, you'll see this figure right here. Now, they say you can tell if someone's a developer by whispering the word time zone into their ear and watching a shudder go down their spine. These are the time zones in Antarctica. Can you imagine dealing with that nonsense? The thing is that the funny part of this figure doesn't even jump out at you right away. The funny part is based on this hashed region, or I suppose I should say striped region, the region in red and white stripes known as the Ross dependency, which includes at its center the South Pole. And what happens with the Ross dependency is it follows the time zone rules for New Zealand. Now, of course, the South Pole, practically by definition, sees 1 day a year. It's 6 months of daylight and then 6 months of darkness every year. Right around the equinoxes, there are some blended days, but that's it. I mean, it's 6 months of darkness and 6 months of daylight. And yet, because the time zone rules follow that for New Zealand, part of the year, in fact, this currently from last September 25th until this year, April 3rd, the South Pole is in fact on daylight saving time. You've got to save that hour in the middle of the 6 month summer. So here's a quick Java demo. I used JShell to do this. I imported the java.time package. I got the zone ID for the South Pole, which is Antarctica/south_pole, and then used the method getRules.isDaylightSavings on instant.now, and that returns true. So I can show that the South Pole is currently on daylight savings time. Now, couple of comments. First of all, it's daylight saving, not savings, even though everybody says savings, and I have a difficult time resisting that too. Secondly, why are they doing that? Well, of course, because the people from the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station are from New Zealand, and they talk to the people in the home base, and it's just easier to be on the same time with those people at home. So that figures. Here's the Wikipedia page on the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. And I have to point out at the bottom here, let me go down to the very bottom. Not quite there. Here, time zone. The South Pole sees the sun rise and set only once a year due to atmospheric refraction. These do not occur exactly at the equinoxes. Yeah. The station uses New Zealand time since all flights to McMurdo Station depart from Christchurch in New Zealand, and therefore all official travel from the pole goes through New Zealand. That's another reason. The part that disappointed me, I'm like, oh no, is that according to the IANA time zone database, the Internet Assigned Names Authority, which manages the time zone database, they've deprecated the region ID Antarctica/South Pole, and it's now Pacific/Auckland. It's just like, I liked using the South Pole, there, and I probably still will. Not that anybody cares. I mean, just for the demo. But I like that idea. Now, I also got to mention, if I go back to the top of this page, I had no idea. The station is located on a high plateau at 2,835 meters or 9,301 feet above sea level. I mean, I thought Denver was up there and Mexico City's like in the 7,000s. That's even higher. But 9,300 feet above sea level? Wow, that I would have trouble with, I'm sure. And of course, I also couldn't resist doing this. Let me do this. See, weather, South Pole Station. And it is currently approximately 46 to 50 degrees below zero, depending on whether you're Celsius or Fahrenheit. And the wind chill drops substantially, even with only 6 knots of wind. I mean, I get the idea of like, ooh, wouldn't it be cool to visit that place? But I have to admit that at my age, I have a favorite sweater, and that's just around the house. So yeah, that might be pushing it a little bit. Now, I wrote this post and I mentioned something about the Chatham Islands as well, which is off of the coast of New Zealand. And their time zone is one of the only 3 in the world that has a 45-minute offset. So the others being Nepal, or more specifically, it's Asia/Kathmandu, both with and without an H in there. And then there's an unofficial one in Central Australia known as Eucla. And I'm sure there's a story about why that is, but I couldn't find it. Let me know. Well, my friend Paul King, friend/basically hero, who's the head of the Groovy framework, decided to take that opportunity to write a blog post, and I believe it's right here, about Australian time zones, which ties into this. So this is part of the Apache Groovy blog. So groovy.apache.org/blog/Australian-time zones is the URL. I'll put the link in the description. And he mentioned my discussion about time zones in Antarctica and went on to bring up, first of all, he did his little demo in Groovy the same way I did it. Of course, he used the Groovy shell and Groovy rules, like just saying .rules instead of get rules, that sort of thing. But otherwise, it's the same thing I did. And then he mentioned Eucla, the one in Australia with a 45-minute offset. And you can take a look at all this, and it's really fascinating. But he points out Eucla is sitting here right halfway between Perth and Adelaide. And according to him, the story was that there were telegraph operators from both places, and they needed to communicate with the base, and they just decided to split the difference. And the time zone difference between Perth and Adelaide was an hour and a half, as it turned out. In fact, here's the time zones in Australia Wikipedia page, and you can see there's a 9.5 or a 10.5 here and an 8 there. So there's an hour and a half, or sometimes a two and a half hour difference between those two. So he talked about that, which was fascinating, and said it's also the western end of the treeless plain. Yes. So another strange fact, you got a couple more, but the one I wanted to focus on is, let me scroll down, this one. The Queensland-New South Wales border actually cuts Gold Coast Airport almost precisely in half, including the runway. So technically, flights departing in the summer months leave the terminal in one time zone and take off from the ground in another. So, of course, that will really mess up their departed on time statistics, and they've chosen simply to operate on Queensland time. But here, I had to open up Google Maps here, and you can see I look for Gold Coast Airport, and there's Australia. And as I zoom in, you'll see it's right on the border between Queensland and New South Wales. I mean, I keep zooming in. There's Brisbane, which is where Paul King lives. So not surprising he knows about this. And if I keep zooming in more and more and more, it doesn't matter how far I go, I'm going to stay right on that border, right in there, which is a riot. I mean, you can see that's a runway being split in the middle between the two time zones. So at any rate, take a look at the article. It was fun, very interesting. I mentioned I was thinking of turning all this into a YouTube short, but now I'm thinking it might be fun to make an actual YouTube video on it, because I also do a little demo in the Modern Java Recipes book detecting all the time zones around the world that are non-integral multiples or non-integral offsets, I suppose I should say, from UTC. So anything that's either 30 minutes or 45. And take a look at that. Okay, next section, a blurry JPEG of the web. Now this week, the New Yorker published a fascinating article called ChatGPT is a blurry JPEG of the web. Now I don't subscribe to the New Yorker, so I have to open this in an incognito window just so I can show it to you here. And it's a fascinating article by Ted Chiang. Now, Ted Chiang is a name that hopefully may be familiar to you. He is a science fiction author, and he wrote a short story collection called, I think I mentioned it over here, Stories of Your Life and Others. That was the story that was adapted into the movie Arrival. And it's a fascinating article. I do recommend reading it. But what did he mean by a blurry JPEG of the web? And his argument is that these artificial intelligence programs that are doing pattern matching are trying to compress all the information on the web into something they can search quickly and extract information out of. That's kind of what neural networks do. They make a model of the training data. And of course, the training data in this case is all the information available on the web. The problem is that neural networks are a lossy encoding or a lossy compression. In other words, they lose data as they do this. They're not getting all the information in a lossless manner. And this is how you can get wrong answers out of them. One example he mentioned is arithmetic. Now, even in elementary school, kids understand arithmetic. They memorize a small set of examples like 3 plus 5, and then they learn the rules on how to do arithmetic. And that way you can, rather than save every example of addition you've ever seen, you just know that handful of small numbers and how to add. And that's good enough. But ChatGPT and other AI tools, they don't understand anything. They're just doing the pattern matching. So if you give them something that it's not likely that they've seen, like instead of adding 3 plus 5, you ask them to add a pair of 3-digit numbers, it may not have encountered that, and therefore it's guessing, and it may very well get it wrong. So fascinating. That's why the ChatGPT and other similar tools here are referred to as a blurry JPEG of the web. It's a lossy compression of the information there. Now, the other article that was released this week was written by Stephen Wolfram, who is an acknowledged genius. He was the creator of the Mathematica program and has written on cellular automata and a wide range of topics. And he wrote an article called "What is ChatGPT Doing and Why Does It Work?" on his own site. Of course. Now, I can't go through all of this because, my goodness, I still haven't even been through all of it. It goes on and on and on. You can see these figures are from Mathematica, and there's various examples and everything. But his basic thesis is that what these articles do is they look for words that go together. And then when it has a certain set of words, it says, well, what's the next word? And the next word could be something with a range of probabilities, and it introduces a weighting into those probabilities, partly from its own assessment and partly from the training data. And that's how it eventually builds up a paragraph that sounds right, that gives you something that looks plausible because, again, it's based on what it's seen on the web. So it's another way of looking at this philosophy of saying that these tools are just pattern matching of the data that came through the training data. Now, people have been pushing this really hard, to try to find the edge cases where they can break it. And one of them was this great post. Is somebody took Bing, which now, of course, has ChatGPT built into it, so that you don't have to go get an account at OpenAI and try to access it there, and ask Bing, what's the population of the planet Mars? I got this answer about it having 2.5 billion people. Now, I tried doing this myself, and of course, they've fixed the bug since then. No, it says 0, but won't Elon be surprised kind of thing, assuming anybody would trust Elon to back out of the driveway at this point. But at any rate, that was interesting. I thought that was fascinating. Now, the other thing that was in the news, which I'm not really going to focus on. There was a New York Times article where a reporter there spent a few extended sessions with GPT, like multiple hours, which Microsoft doesn't allow anymore. But they tried that and eventually got the program to show some personality. And it was a personality of an annoyed teenager kind of thing. It was kind of annoying. Even told him that he should doesn't have a happy marriage and he should leave his wife for ChatGPT. Now, if I was him, I honestly don't think I would have told that story, because if these things work the way I suspect they do, the AI tool is trying to give you what you want to hear. So it's training itself on what it thinks you want to hear. And if it thinks you want to hear that you've got an unhappy marriage and you might want to leave your wife, I worry that says more about the questioner than it does about the AI tool, that there may be an unpleasant discussion in that guy's future. Now, again, I don't know, but that's what it sounded like to me. So at any rate, these were in the news this week. I thought you might find them interesting. Let's go to the tweets and toots now. So this section starts off with a great toot that's 3 laws safe. The 0th law of robotics is that a robot may not decrease shareholder value or by inaction allow shareholder value to decline. Oh boy, doesn't that explain a lot. ChatGPT already has their plus version where they'll charge you $20 a month to answer questions. And I'm like, here it comes. I got to get into that sweet, sweet subscription money. Get into there. So we'll see how it goes. I say I have no idea what to do with this. The biblically accurate Cookie Monster picture here. Yeah, okay. Now, if you don't know what that is a reference to, there was a meme that went around recently on biblically accurate angels, and it was talking about how angels in the popular culture are often very different from angel descriptions that come to us through the Bible, which can be really harsh and weird and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, okay. So this is the biblically accurate Cookie Monster, which is right and yet so wrong, and even looks like it has a picture of Grover's face on his tail, that's disturbing. I don't know. I don't even want to know who came up with that. Here's the question: where does it end? I thought this was a riot. Somebody tooted, "I've been using the sunk cost fallacy for too long to stop using it now." Which is a great way to define the sunk cost fallacy. That needs, where is it? Yep, there we go. Needed a rim shot there. But a couple of the replies were just as good. Somebody replied to that with, I mean, if you stop using the sunk cost fallacy, next minute it's the slippery slope fallacy, and where does it end? Down at the bottom of that slippery slope, presumably. And someone also wrote, I think I probably don't really have imposter syndrome. I wonder how that plays into the Dunning-Kruger effect, but I'll leave that for another time. This was one of my favorites, came up this week. An important lesson for us all is to fly smarter, not harder. And the idea is you got this big bird carrying a branch and a little bird. Are they helping in the back or are they just resting? I mean, I gotta know, does the big bird know the little bird is even there? Or are they friends and the big bird's giving them a ride? Or is it one of those, the little bird going, no, I got it, I'll help, I'm participating, I don't know, but it's a great picture. Okay, so those were the tweets this week, and toots as well. Last week, I taught my Android Development Bootcamp. This week, I have a reactive Spring and Spring Boot course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform in the APAC time zones. So evening time for me, hopefully a decent time for people in the Asia and Pacific time zones, including Kathmandu. I wonder if I'll get anybody from there. We'll see. So thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed all that, and I'll talk to you all again next week.